BeastNet Podcast, sponsored in part by James Safety Services, OCR Buddy, and supported by the fitness community. Here we discuss all things fitness related, running, rucking, mental health and preparedness, and of course, obstacle course racing. Welcome to the BeastNet.
Hey everybody, it's Mike here with BeastNet, and on this episode I got with me Matthew Saylor. Matthew, tell everyone a little bit about yourself.
I am originally from a small town in Bayonne, New Jersey, and I grew up there. I lived there for 29 years. Then I got married. And then I became a New Yorker, moved to the city, and then marriage brought me to the Sunshine State. No, not the Sunshine State, because the Sunshine State would be Florida, right? So I'm in California, another Sunshine State right now. So yeah, so that's where I'm from. My background, let's see where we go from there.
I mean, it's really kind of, one of the things that, we've seen is, you do Spartan races, you do the OCRs, all that kind of stuff. But
so right now, because of like OCRs just kind of being on the lowdown right now, I mean, there are some like obstacle course like races that are kind of like scurrying about right now, but it's just, I'm just like, I have a season pass from like last year. So, but it was just an ultimate headache, just transferring races and seeing when things are going to open back up. And there's only like limited, like right now, Florida is the only state that seems to have anything with Spartan related. So, like I'm signed up for one in Calgary that I had an ultra for like last year. I'm still signed up for them this year because doing the transfers, but it's like right now, I mean, I'm just maintaining the training regimen. When it's like, if I was a professional, I'm like, if I get the call, I'm like, all right, well, until they confirm things, then I'll just, then I'll start getting like really like hyped up. Until the meantime, it's just like, just kind of going through the daily flow of, training and, just running and getting that mileage in. And
yeah, I know that one. That's been me. I was signed up for a bunch of races last year. Some of the ones I was signed up for transferred to this year. So, I mean, as long as it goes, I should be in Vegas next week. Not next week, but next month.
Yeah.
So Spartan.
Yeah, that's like my first race is that would be in Montana. So I'm scheduled to do that in, is it May? And then
May. I'm gonna do all three, maybe all four that weekend.
Okay. So that would kind of like the way it's falling. I only registered in 2020. I did the Greek peak, and then they started closing everything down. So when they did that, I was just like, up to that point last year, I did the Greek peak, and then I was already scheduled. My goal was just to schedule my ultras out of the way. This was before COVID, and then once I did that, my goal was to do like 5 Spartan ultras, and I signed up for one in Calgary, Montana, Tahoe, Utah, and Hawaii. So those were my 5 ultras I was going to do for that calendar year, and then they all closed down. So it's just my races just became rather than like get bored with not being able to do races, I was just like, all right, well, I'm always like somebody that has to challenge myself. Like I was just going to the mountains every week, and then I was already doing that for training in general, but I started going to the mountains, and then I was like, rather than what my normal routine was, which was like putting in maybe like, I don't know, 14, 15 miles like every weekend. I started really thinking outside the box and be like, all right, let's do marathon distance and stuff like that. And then my body was getting used to it, and I just kept doing it. I was like doing 26 miles and 30 miles the next weekend, and then another 30 miles and 10,000 feet elevation. I never would have thought I'd been doing like back-to-back consecutive ultras, but that's what I started doing since I couldn't race.
And we all find our own. I've been doing a little bit, not that extreme, but
I go nuts. I go nuts with and it's hard to battle.
I say you should look at the broken arrow that Steve Hammond puts on in Lake Tahoe. It's sometime in November or something.
Is that a course that he has set up?
It's a race. It's one that I've talked to Steve Hammond about it before, but it's Broken Arrow Sky Race. I think there's an ultra, a marathon, and like a 5K, but there's like each one's got something like 10,000 feet elevation. It's just freaking something stupid.
Yeah.
It's insane.
Okay.
So, but it's all in Tahoe. So
Oh,
that's
and that's awesome. Dude, I love Tahoe so much.
yeah.
It's when I started going 2018 was when I really started with Spartan. I started doing, I was really traveling the country, like going to all these different venues, taking time off
Mhm.
from work. That was my vacation time. So I'd literally go fly out to where I needed to. And I came across Tahoe. That was the first time I had gone there in 2018. I felt it was like Breckenridge for me, because Breckenridge, the beast that I did in 2018, those are two places and venues I would say that I just was like comparing to every other venue I went to. I was just like mesmerized. I just absolutely loved everything about Tahoe. I loved everything about Breckenridge, and I'd absolutely sign up for Tahoe in a heartbeat. Like anything in Tahoe, it doesn't have to be Spartan.
Oh yeah, and this isn't Spartan. It's like I said, it's called the Broken Arrow Sky Race, and what is it? October 1st through 3rd.
Okay, so you
And
get your
it's yeah, everything I've read about it, it sounds freaking amazing. So I want to do it. It sounds like it would challenge me to what I want. And that's what I've been looking for. Because I know that's one reason why we want to talk to you is you've had an amazing journey, a lot more than I have. I mean, I've lost 100 pounds in the last year, but just really pushing. But I know you've surpassed that a little bit. So
yeah. I mean, I don't ever say I surpassed anybody in regards, because I had a discussion with somebody that's kind of that's close to me that I knew from my hometown growing up. Best friend's uncle, he had he was always a bigger guy, but he accumulated a lot of weight and got up to like 420 pounds. And recently he's kind of going through a transformation himself. So I've been dying to have like a talk with him about he's just been busy with each other's lives, so we haven't really had the chance to, with him having kids and work, and then kind of like the same with me. I don't have kids, but just getting a hold. But finally I did yesterday, and it was just how I look at my transformation. So it's like, I think the severity of like how bad it was for me at that stage being, what led me to being 520 pounds. I always say in like testimonials I write, I always say I was 500 pounds, but I always think it was more than 500 pounds, because I mean, I physically couldn't move. There was like, I would literally like try to get up out of bed, and I couldn't move from my bed. Like I had to be helped just to sit up. Like I was such as a large frame where like fitting out my front door was like such a complication. Like if I sat on this chair that I'm sitting on now, this is made out of like metal, but I would bend the legs. I would be afraid to sit on chairs, so I would like couches I would sit on, like they were already like caved in from the weight that they had. How I look at it, I mean, it's been such a journey. But it's also just such a long period of time that's just passed. So how I look at it, I remember my weight, like losing 50 pounds, like the first 50 pounds for me, it was such a difficult task, because at that time when you're going through transformations, and I can like ask you, what was probably the hardest time, like what's the hardest thing to go through for your like weight loss, at least in terms of like your first couple of pounds that you're losing? And it's really the part that you're just kind of trying to adapt to a new, like you're teaching yourself all these new things that you never really had in your life before. At me, I didn't have that in my life. I never
yeah.
have that structure. I didn't have that. My family was always a very unhealthy family. I lived in a household where, my mom was a nurse, and before she retired, I mean, she was bringing home McDonald's and fast food rather than like home cooked meals. So, we were in a family of nutrition. and educating on things like that. So that kind of carries over into like your teens and like your young adulthood, years. And me, I was just the type of person that was like glued to my couch, like as a person, because I wasn't athletic. I had no interest in sports. Basketball was probably pretty much it. So like if when I was like in my teens to like even like up to my peak, if you asked me to go even for a walk, I would I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
Let alone a run.
All right, and now we're going to take a quick pause so we can hear from our sponsors.
Does your business need first aid, AED, OSHA, flagging, or other safety training? James Safety Services is your one-stop shop. Find them on Facebook today at James Safety Services WA and ask for a quote on hosting your training needs.
And we're back.
So what changed your mind? I mean, it's one of those things. It's like that. That's one thing that a lot of people ask, like me, because I mean, like I said, I've dropped 100, but everyone always asks, what finally changed your mind? What made you decide you wanted to fix it?
Death was it for me. I didn't want to die because that's where I was going. I mean, it was so bad to the point. I mean, my like last like month, like 2 weeks to a month, like it's all vague because like I kind of block out a lot, like especially like how I felt and what I did have to endure, but it wasn't pretty, like going to bed every night. Like I had sleep apnea, so I was afraid to fall asleep because I felt like, there were times where I'd fall asleep and my because of how much like fat I carried, and just how big I was. I remember like falling asleep and I'd just not even feel faint of breath, but I just stopped breathing for a moment. And that was probably the scariest like thing that I had to have for a while, because I think my like from like 18, no, so it was like probably like from like when I was like 420 on, like going above 500, that's when I like developed sleep apnea. Like at that point I had like, I was pre-diabetic, so I wasn't on insulin, but I had to take medication for it. I was on like thyroid medication, and this is just at like 19 and 20 years old. So I mean, at that time I was already on all those medications, which do, the knowledge on it now, I'm not on any of that, but the knowledge on that is they stimulate your hunger and your appetite to want to eat more. Yeah, but my drive came from just, it really came from like I didn't want to like lose my life, and I didn't want to go out like that. I was eating myself to that point, but there did become a time where I started to, where I started to actually think, and there were days where I was like, I wasn't thinking. I was just, my patterns where I woke up, I would eat massive amounts of food, and then I would like watch TV and play video games, and I'd eat more food, like not even 2 hours that pass. I mean, I would eat food. Like if you watch those 600-pound life,
Yeah.
and like, I've never watched it because I don't want to, that for me, that's like, I can't watch that show, but I've seen bits and pieces of it. That's exactly what my life was like. I was stuck to a chair. I was stuck to this couch where my body was just like, you can see, if you look, if I can like I can picture it, like it's just like my body was stained there. Like, so if I got up off of it, it's just, you would see like, like the couch would be caved in one, but like that was my life. So I couldn't even, so it was a hard thing to do. It was like, I look back and I was like, I didn't know how I was going to do it. I would start writing to The Biggest Loser. My mom was still alive, and so she was overweight too. We, so I was like, I always felt like I couldn't do it alone. It was something that I didn't know how to. I didn't have the strength, the willpower, any of that. And I didn't, there wasn't a point where I believed in myself. So I had my mom, like, help me, like, videos out of and like just even help me write and submit stories to The Biggest Loser. So I did that literally for I think 2 years in a row. So like prior to me hitting my peak, so I was like reaching out because I knew where I was going, and I just couldn't do anything about it. It's like every year, like New Year's came, and I was like, all right, I said I'm gonna do it, but I can't do it. I didn't have the strength. I didn't have the the mental like commitment to it. I didn't. I would probably like go through like maybe a week or two where I'd like do okay, and then I just was like, fuck it. I didn't want to put in the work. I didn't want to put in the work. Yeah. But then fear is just what hit me. I mean, I ate my life to that point because I did want to kill myself, and I always write it in like testimonials. Not all of them because it's such a depressing story, but like I was eating to I couldn't kill myself, but I was eating to do that. And then when I had to go to a doctor for like a checkup, and when I was told that I was going to lose my feet, that was kind of like the first kicker for me. So like my doctor had told me like, listen, we're going to have to cut your feet off if you don't do something right now. So that's when that was one of the first triggers for me. It wasn't the thing. It was the first thing then that got the wheels in motion for me. I didn't start acting right away, but it was like making me think like, I can't lose my feet, even though I'm like thinking to myself, like I'm doing all this leading to, cause I do want to, like, I don't want to be here anymore. But then, hearing that, I went to a wedding when I was like, I think 19 going on 20, and he had cancer, and he had passed away 2 weeks after the wedding that I went to. And he had said to me, he's like, listen, he's like, you're going down the path where you're going to be dead, and you're going to be dead before like I am even dying. He's like, I'm going to die like in like 2 weeks or so. He's like, I'm not gonna like survive much longer, but he's like, you're gonna die. Cause I remember having a plate, and my plate at the wedding was full of like, I'll never forget this, because this is the last image I had with my grandfather. I had a plate that was like full of like cannolis and cream puffs, and like it was just like a plastic plate, but I had every like dessert, like triple it. Like I had 3 cannolis, and these cannolis are big. And then I didn't even get to eat one. And my grandfather, like, calls me over, and like my walk isn't like a walk. Like it's, I mean, at that point, I was like, I'm just like, I feel like, it's just like I was the State Puff Marshmallow Man, where I'm just, slowly just, going through and walking over to him, and he calls me over and he says, like, listen, you're gonna die. What are you doing? Do you want to have anything with your life? And hearing that, and then seeing that he passed away, kind of just was like, he was the first person in my life, in my family, that rather than allow me to do what I was doing, like he gave me a reality check. And I didn't have that. I had a lot of people in my family that not that they enabled it, because I put a lot of fault on my own. I was old enough to where I'm a young adult. I can start making the changes in my life if I really want to. But I didn't want to, and I was just really in a very dark place then. And then hearing that from my grandfather, it was just like knowing, I think, in a combination, he was going to die. And then when he did pass away from cancer, it was just, it made me think about that every day. Like, before I even made a commitment, I was like, that he was the only person that I can think of up to that point. Like, I had family that cared for me, but it was just like, like, you got to do something about this, so it made me like really start thinking about it. And then like, thinking about how he's gone, and I was like, you're right. He's definitely an integral part in my journey, like, especially in the beginning.
That's amazing. And then
Yeah.
how did you start doing it?
Thanks for listening to the BeastNet podcast. If you haven't done it yet, find us on Facebook, like and share the podcast. Give us a review on iTunes or Spotify. All these things will help to expand the show in the future. Don't forget to subscribe and let us know what you think and what you'd like to hear.